Close your eyes. Let the noise of the day dissolve. You've arrived at the edge of the known world, a space where everything you thought was certain quietly unravels, where questions replace answers, and what you call reality becomes as soft and slippery as a dream you can almost remember. Now, breathe, because you're about to step into a space few dare to explore, a space of paradox, not just clever word games or logical puzzles, but doorways, living doorways, into the parts of existence that don't make sense because they were never meant to. And yet, you feel something calling you there, don't you? Let's begin with something simple. A sentence. 5 small words that shake the very foundation of truth. This statement is false. If the sentence is true, then it must be false. But if it's false, that means it's true. Do you feel the loop beginning, the snake eating its tail? The paradox doesn't offer a clean answer. Instead, it opens something. A sense that your mind can't hold it all, and maybe it was never supposed to. And if you can't fully trust a sentence to be true or false, how much else have you believed that isn't what it seems? Let's go deeper. Have you ever looked into a mirror and wondered if what you're seeing is actually you? Not just your reflection, but the thing reflecting. If all you've ever known of your face is a mirrored image, have you ever really seen it, or only its echo? And if you can't look directly into your own eyes without help, how do you ever know who you really are? You use thoughts to understand yourself, but thoughts are just voices in the dark. You feel things, but emotions shift like wind. You tell stories, but they change. Your name, your history, your memories, all fluid, malleable, rearranged with each retelling. So who's watching all of this? When you say, I, what is it pointing to? That question alone holds a paradox so deep that sages, mystics, and scientists have spent entire lifetimes circling it like a black hole. The moment you try to catch the self, it slips through your fingers, because the observer can never fully observe itself. You can't bite your own teeth. You can't touch your own fingertip with that same finger, and yet you exist. You are aware. You are here. Already you may feel the gentle unease rising, the sense that you've always been standing on a floor that could vanish at any time. But this isn't a warning. It's an invitation, not to fear, but to fall upward, to rise inward into the space where logic collapses and something truer begins to breathe. Because paradox isn't confusion, it's a kind of sacred clarity. Now imagine this. You're standing before a great wooden ship, the Ship of Theseus. Over time, every plank of wood is replaced, every nail, every rope. Nothing original remains. And yet, it still sails with the same name, the same story. Is it the same ship? If you took all the old parts and built another ship from them, which one would be the real one? Now, bring that question closer. To you. You've shed skin cells, replaced organs. You think differently than you did 5 years ago. Your beliefs, your habits, your very atoms, all changed. Is the version of you from 10 years ago still you, or just a memory wearing your name? And if everything changes moment by moment, then who, exactly, are you? You may try to anchor yourself to something permanent. But permanence is the one thing this world refuses to give. Even the stars die, even the galaxies shift. And yet, there is something here, something that hasn't changed. The one noticing, the one listening to these words. It doesn't have a name, it doesn't rise or fall, it doesn't get older. It watches the passing thoughts and feelings like clouds, never becoming one. That awareness might be closer to who you are than anything your mind can name. And this is where the paradox sharpens. Because awareness cannot be seen, and yet it sees all. It has no form, and yet it holds every form. It can't be touched, but everything touches it. How can something be nothing and still be everything? This is the great question, the silent heart of all paradox. And maybe, just maybe, reality itself is the same. not one thing or another, but both, neither, more. Look at time. We live as if it's a straight line, past, present, future. But your memories shift each time you recall them. The past isn't fixed. It morphs in the mind's hands. And the future? It's a mist shaped by dreams, by fear, by hope, never quite what you expect. And in dreams, haven't you lived entire stories in minutes? Loved people who never existed? Felt real pain, real joy, in worlds made entirely of imagination? So tell me this, if a dream feels real while you're dreaming it, how do you know this isn't the same? What if time bends not just in theory but in experience? What if reality isn't a place but a choice? A rhythm of awareness collapsing possibility into form again and again. What if none of it's solid, just layers of perception, light filtered through a mind trying to make sense of it all? And what if that mind isn't what you thought it was? Let your breath slow, let your body soften, because the more relaxed you become, the more clearly you'll feel it, that the structure of normal life is woven together with contradictions, illusions, agreements. You've been taught to believe that up is always up and down is always down, that objects exist independently, that thoughts come from the brain and the brain belongs to the body and the body is you. But where is the proof? When you try to find the edge of yourself, you can't. Not truly. Not in the body, not in the mind, not in the story. So what if you aren't in the world? What if the world is in you? What if you've never actually seen the world as it is, only as you are? What if everything you call reality is just a mirror, not of truth but of you? It's a bold claim, but look closer. Have you ever noticed how two people can hear the same words and walk away with completely different stories? How you can look at a cloudy sky and feel peace, while someone else feels dread? The world isn't giving us truth. It's offering reflections. And here's the twist. You're not just seeing the mirror, you are the mirror. The way you interpret events, the way you filter emotions, the way you make sense of pain, joy, silence, all of it is shaped by who you think you are. Your past, your beliefs, your fears, your hopes. So every experience becomes a kind of echo, not a fact, but a reflection of the observer. This brings us to one of the strangest paradoxes you'll ever encounter, the observer effect. In quantum physics, it's been shown that particles behave differently when they are being observed. Imagine that reality itself shifts simply because you're watching it. Something as small as your attention alters the outcome. Now take that one step further. What happens when you observe your own mind? What happens when the watcher tries to watch the watcher? That's where the lines blur. Because just like in physics, the act of watching changes the thing being watched. When you become aware of your anger, it softens. When you notice your thoughts racing, they slow down. Your attention isn't passive. It shapes what it touches. And so, who's in control? Is your mind creating the thoughts, or are the thoughts creating your mind? Let it wash over you. Don't rush to find an answer. Just feel it. You are both the observer and the observed, the creator and the creation, the mirror and the reflection. You are Schrödinger's consciousness, both awake and dreaming, alive in two worlds. But here's where it gets even stranger. You can never see your own eyes directly, only through a mirror, only through reflection. And the same is true of your identity. You know yourself through relationships, through experiences, through memories, but never directly, never naked, never untouched by perception. So who are you really? Are you the face in the mirror, the voice in your head, the feeling in your chest, or are you the space behind all of it? Let's slow things down and feel this from a different angle. Have you ever had a moment where everything you believed suddenly felt unstable? Like the floor beneath your thoughts just gave way. Maybe it was a breakup, a death, a spiritual experience, a dream you couldn't explain, a conversation that shattered your worldview. Whatever it was, for a brief moment, the story cracked, and you saw something through it, something deeper. In those moments, you glimpse the truth, the raw, living paradox that no concept can hold. And it's terrifying, but it's also beautiful, because you realize something sacred. Reality doesn't need to make sense to be real. In fact, the parts that don't make sense might be the only parts that are real. The mind loves order. It wants clean lines and clear answers. But truth dances on the edge of contradiction. It laughs at neat boxes. It slips through the fingers of logic like water through a sieve. Think back to the liar paradox. This statement is false. Try to hold it still. Try to make it behave. You can't, because it's alive, breathing between opposites, daring you to accept that some things are true and false at the same time, not in spite of the contradiction, but because of it. And maybe your whole life is like that. Maybe your identity is both fixed and changing. Maybe your thoughts are both real and illusion. Maybe the world is both out there and in here. Do you feel the ground moving yet? Good, because you're not here to stand still. You're here to let go, to float in the space where meaning unravels, to rest in the silence behind the mind's endless grasping. There's nothing to solve, only something to see. And here's what you begin to see, if you look closely enough. You are not just a person having thoughts. You are the awareness in which those thoughts appear. You are not just a being inside a world. You are the space in which the world arises. And this is the ultimate paradox. You are what you've been searching for. But you can never find yourself the way you'd find an object. Because you are not an object, you are the subject, the witness, the presence before all names. You've never seen your own face, but you've seen the world, and in every glimpse it was secretly showing you. You. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath deepen. This isn't meant to be grasped. It's meant to be felt, known, without words. The paradox of truth is that the more you seek it, the more it dissolves. But when you stop seeking, it shows up everywhere, in a falling leaf, in the pause between breaths, in the way your thoughts slow when you remember to listen. This is the truth beyond language, and it lives inside of you. You can't chase it. You can only become quiet enough to hear it. And so, here you are, suspended in a space where opposites kiss, where false and true collapse into mystery, where you remember that everything real was always made of something unreal, and yet somehow it was always enough. There's a strange freedom that comes when you stop needing everything to make sense. It's like walking into a fog and realizing you're no longer afraid. You don't need the road to be visible. You don't need the map to be accurate, because something deeper has taken the wheel. Something ancient, quiet, watching. Maybe you've felt it before. Those rare moments when time stretches and you're just here, not analyzing, not naming, just being. And in that stillness, something opens, not with noise, but with a whisper. Reality is not what you think it is. Because thinking has limits. It's a tool, a function, like a hammer. But the mistake is believing the hammer can build a cloud, that logic alone can hold what is. It can't, not because it's broken, but because the truth is too alive, too wild, too paradoxical. And you are part of that wildness. Let's look at the self again, this time not as an idea, but as an experience. Right now you might say, I am tired, or I am relaxed, or I am listening. But who is the I in those sentences? Where is it? Can you point to it? Is it behind your eyes, in your chest, somewhere in your thoughts? Or is it the space all of that is happening inside? Try this. Close your eyes. Listen to the silence behind these words. Now ask, silently, who is listening? The answer won't come in a sentence. It will come as a feeling, a presence, a stillness that doesn't move, even when everything else does. That is you. Not the story, not the name, not even the body. You are the space in which the story plays out. But here's the twist. You've been trained your entire life to identify with the story, with the labels, with the thoughts. You've been taught that who you are is something you can describe. But description belongs to the world of form. You are formless. And yet, you live in a body. You think thoughts, you feel pain and joy and confusion. You play the part while knowing deep down that the part isn't the whole. This is the paradox of the self. You are both wave and ocean, both actor and stage, both mirror and light. And when you stop trying to choose just one, you begin to wake up, not in the ordinary sense, but in the way the sky wakes up to the sunrise, slowly, gently, all at once. Let's go even deeper now. Have you ever watched yourself having a thought? A strange moment of detachment. You're angry, but you know you're angry. You're thinking, but you're also aware of the thinking. There's a gap, a distance, and in that distance, freedom. Because if you can observe it, you are not it. You can't be the thought. You are the witness of the thought. And that means you're not the story. You're not the worry. You're not the role. You are the open sky. And thoughts are just weather. And like all weather, they pass. Even the stormiest ones. Even the ones that feel like they'll never end. They do. They always do. But here's where the paradox blooms again. If you're not your thoughts, and you're not your emotions, and you're not your body, then what are you? And how do you even ask that question if the thing asking is part of the illusion? It's like a dream character becoming aware they're dreaming. They can't wake up by trying harder. They wake up by realizing the nature of their dream. And so can you. It's because you're dreaming right now, maybe not in the literal sense, but in the way you project meaning onto everything you see, in the way you tell yourself stories about people, places, futures, fears, all of it filtered, all of it interpreted. And that means all of it can be questioned. That's the sacred power of paradox. It doesn't just confuse you, it frees you. It opens cracks in the wall where light pours in. It reveals the scaffolding of belief that you didn't even know was there. And in that exposure, there's a choice. Not to escape, but to soften, to step out of certainty and into wonder. You see, the truth isn't something you can conquer. It's not a puzzle to solve. It's a space to fall into, like love, like silence, like sleep. And the deeper you fall, the more you realize there is no bottom, because you were never falling at all. You were floating, held, cradled by the mystery you tried so hard to understand. So let go. Let go of the need to explain. Let go of the need to label. Let go of the idea that you are separate from the thing you're observing. You are the paradox, the question and the answer, the dream and the dreamer, the illusion and the one who sees through it. And maybe, just maybe, that's not a flaw. Maybe it's the whole point. Because if you were easy to define, you'd be something less. But you're not. You're spacious. You are luminous. You are awareness, wrapped in mystery, disguised as a person. And tonight, as you rest, let these words echo in that space. You don't have to make sense of the paradox. You only have to feel it. Let it dissolve the edges of who you thought you were. Let it carry you home, to the part of you that's never needed answers to be at peace, to the part that already knows. Let's slow things even more. Feel your breath again, not to control it, just to notice it. Each inhale, arising, each exhale, falling away. Breath is the one thing that's always been with you, yet you've never really seen it. You can feel it, observe it, rely on it. But you can't hold it still. It's movement itself. And like truth, the moment you try to pin it down, it escapes. Have you ever tried to explain something so personal, so real to you, only to have the words ruin it. There are truths that cannot be spoken, not because they are secret, but because the very act of describing them distorts them. That's what happens when you try to describe yourself. When you say, I am this, or I'm not that, you're reducing something infinite into something small. You're taking the sky and turning it into a window. But the truth of who you are isn't a window. It's the wind. It's the space. It's the silence between thoughts. And here's the paradox. The more you try to be something, the further you drift from what you truly are. Because truth, real truth, isn't found in trying, it's found in stopping. In resting in the place where you don't need to be anything. Just awareness, just presence, just this. And when you rest there, something incredible begins to happen. You stop needing the world to fit your story. You stop needing other people to validate your existence. You stop reaching outside for proof that you're enough, because you start to feel the truth inside you. The truth that was always there, just covered in noise. You see, most of your suffering hasn't come from what is. It's come from what you think should be. The argument with reality. The inner war with what already exists. But reality doesn't need your approval. It just is. And when you stop resisting it, it softens. Not because it changes, but because you do. That's the quiet gift of paradox. It doesn't ask you to understand. It asks you to surrender. To sit in the fire of contradiction and realize you don't burn. Because underneath the stories, the logic, the layers, you are untouched. And maybe you've always known this. Maybe that's why you've felt restless at times. Not because something was wrong with you, but because you could sense the illusion. You could feel the cracks in the performance. You knew deep down that there was something more. Not something to reach for, but something to fall into. Something ancient, something sacred. You. And when you fall into yourself, the real self, you don't find a person. You don't find a set of traits or memories or goals. You find space, stillness, a gentle hum that holds everything, but is bound by nothing. That's what all the mystics have been pointing to. That's what all the riddles, the koans, the sacred texts try to reveal. Not a philosophy, not a religion, but a knowing, a felt experience. That this, all of this, is happening within you. Not within the you that others see, but within the awareness that sees even that. Now, feel that awareness, not with your mind, but with your being. Let the words slow. Let them dissolve into presence. There's nowhere else you need to be. Nothing you need to fix. Right now, everything is unfolding exactly as it should, even the questions. Even the confusion, even the paradox, especially the paradox, because the paradox is the doorway. It's what opens when logic collapses. It's what breathes when certainty dies. It's what lives when the small self surrenders. And maybe that's why paradoxes don't resolve, because they aren't here to be solved. They're here to undo you, to unravel the illusion of separation, to peel away the need for control. To remind you not with facts, but with silence, that you were never what you thought. You are not a problem to fix. You are a mystery to love. A question worth asking. A truth too vast for words. And if you've ever felt like something was missing, it wasn't wholeness. It was space. The space to be nothing. To be everything. To just be. So allow that now. Allow the tension to melt from your face. Allow your thoughts to drift like clouds. Allow the paradox to do what it's always done, not to confuse you, but to free you. Because freedom isn't about answers. It's about letting go of the need to have them. It's about living in the question. It's about discovering that you don't need to escape the dream, only to realize you are the dreamer. And in that realization, you wake up, softly, gently, not with a bang, but with a breath. So breathe now, not because you're trying to get anywhere, but because right here, right now, is enough. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest paradox of all. You don't need to chase the mystery anymore. It's not hiding in some distant place or waiting in some future version of yourself. It's right here, in the breath you're taking, in the sound of these words brushing against your awareness, in the silence between each sentence. It's always been here, quiet, patient, waiting for you to remember. And maybe that's what paradox is really about. Not confusion, not contradiction, but remembering. Remembering that you are not separate from what you seek, that you are not broken, not lost, not behind. You are simply waking up to something that was always true, even when you forgot, even when you doubted, even when the noise of the world made you believe otherwise. There is a place inside you where none of that ever touched, a place where the mind surrenders, where questions melt into presence, where the self you think you are fades into something vaster. That place isn't out there. It's not hidden in a technique or buried in a book. It's here, right now. The mind will try to take you somewhere else. It will whisper about tomorrow, about the things left undone, about all the ways you need to improve. But none of that is true, not in this moment. Because in this moment, you are already whole. The paradox of truth is that it doesn't need to be found, it needs to be felt. It doesn't come from the outside in, it arises from the inside out. And it doesn't come in words, it comes in stillness. That stillness is where all the great paradoxes live, a place where opposites dissolve, where I am and I am not are the same song sung in different keys, where meaning is felt, not explained. And the more you allow yourself to rest in that space, the more the illusion begins to fall away. You start to see how much of your life has been lived inside a narrative you didn't write, one handed to you by family, by culture, by memory. You've called it truth, but it was just story. A useful story maybe, a familiar one, but still a story. And now the deeper truth is rising. It doesn't ask you to fix the story, only to see it, and once you see it, once you truly see the illusion for what it is, you are no longer bound by it. You become the watcher, the listener, the space. That space is not empty. It's full. Full of possibility. Full of peace. Full of the kind of knowing that can't be spoken, only lived. And in that knowing, the paradox stops being a puzzle and becomes a path. Not a path to somewhere, a path to here. This is what the mystics have always pointed to, what the sages spoke of in riddles and poems. Not to confuse you, but to draw you beyond the mind, to nudge you out of the box of logic and into the light of awareness. Because only in that light can you truly see. And when you do, everything changes, not because the world changes, but because your relationship to it does. You stop needing things to be permanent. You stop clinging to ideas. You stop believing that understanding is the goal, and you begin to live. Really live, not through concepts, but through presence. And presence is paradox. It's the thing you can't describe, yet it's more real than anything you've ever described. It's the thing that remains when everything else disappears. It's the silence beneath the noise, the stillness beneath the storm, the truth beneath the stories, and once you've felt it, you can never forget it. You might get lost again. The mind might pull you back into old patterns, old fears, old loops. That's okay. It's what minds do. But now you know. You've touched the place where paradox lives. You've heard the voice that speaks without words. You've remembered the truth that can't be forgotten. And that changes everything, not in loud dramatic ways, but in quiet, irreversible ones. You begin to listen more than you speak. You begin to notice the space between things. You begin to soften, not because you gave up, but because you let go. And in that letting go, you find something deeper than strength. You find peace. Not the peace that comes from everything being perfect, but the peace that comes from no longer needing it to be. This is the peace of paradox, the peace of the unsolved, the ungraspable, the eternal unknown. It doesn't come with answers. It comes with freedom. And as you rest in that freedom, you start to see the world through new eyes, not as a set of fixed objects, but as a dance, a dream, a shimmering play of consciousness, reflecting itself in 1,000 forms, each form unique, each moment fleeting, and all of it held in you. You are not the form, you are the field, not the story, but the silence that makes the story possible. And even now, as you drift toward sleep or deeper awareness, that silence is holding you. It's not asking anything from you. It's not judging. It's not expecting. It's just being. And so are you. Being. Breathing. Not trying to understand the paradox, but finally becoming one with it. Let's go deeper now, not into space, but into you. You've walked through the paradox of truth. You've touched the silent places where the world doesn't add up, and yet feels more real than ever. Now we turn toward something even more personal, something that feels so close, it hides in plain sight. Who are you? It sounds simple, a question you've answered 1,000 times. Your name, your job, your story, but none of those are truly you. They're labels, layers, costumes. So tonight we peel them back, not to lose you, but to finally meet you. Let's begin with a ship. Long ago, the ship of Theseus sailed across the Aegean Sea, a mighty vessel, weathered by waves, loved by those who believed it carried a legacy. Over time, each plank began to rot, each rope wore thin, so they were replaced, one by one, a new board here, a fresh nail there, until, many years later, every single piece had been exchanged. And the question arose, is it still the same ship? It looks the same. It sails the same seas. It carries the same name. But not a single original part remains. So, is it still Theseus's ship? Now, imagine this. You, it's not as you are now, but as a child. Maybe you remember a certain toy, a specific smell, the sound of someone's voice. That version of you, the small hands, the open eyes, the beating heart, is gone. Replaced. Cell by cell. Memory by memory. Idea by idea. Every 7 years your body is almost entirely new. Your thoughts shift, your emotions deepen, your desires evolve, your voice changes, your dreams morph. So the question is the same, are you still you? And if you are, what makes it so? Is it the body? It can't be. The body has changed. Is it your personality? That shifts too, sometimes overnight. Is it your story? Even that rewrites itself. So where is the thread? What we're really asking is, what holds the shape of identity together when everything else is fluid? And here, something sacred begins to unfold. Because maybe the answer isn't in the pieces, maybe it's in the pattern. Maybe you're not a collection of things, but a current, a movement, a wave that keeps flowing even as every drop of water changes. You are not the plank. You are the rhythm. And that rhythm is mysterious. Think of all the times in your life you felt yourself changing. After loss, after love, after heartbreak or awakening or quiet moments that no one else noticed, moments that rewired something inside you. And maybe those moments felt like death, because they were. The death of an old identity, the collapse of who you thought you were. But something remained, didn't it? Something saw it all, witnessed the falling away, held space for the shedding. He is you, not the story of you, not the surface, the you behind the changes, the presence that watched the child become the teenager, become the adult, become the mystery you are now. That presence hasn't aged, it hasn't moved. It's watched everything else move through it, like stars across the night sky. And when you really feel into that, you begin to realize you were never the ship, you were the sea. The ship sailed upon, the sea it returned to, the sea it always was. This is where identity begins to unravel, not as a problem but as a revelation, because all the labels you've carried, the roles you've played, they were never wrong. They were just incomplete. They were chapters, temporary forms, costumes in the theater of transformation, and underneath them was always the same flame. So let's look at that flame. Let's look at you, not as a solid object, but as something alive, shifting, evolving, burning. A fire is not the same from one moment to the next. It flickers, it sways, it devours, it glows, it changes color, but it remains a fire. You are like that. You are the flame, not the logs. You are the river, not the rocks. You are the wind, not the leaves it stirs. And that means something beautiful. It means you are allowed to change. You are allowed to outgrow versions of yourself. You are allowed to let go of identities that no longer fit. You don't owe the world consistency. You don't even owe yourself a fixed definition. You are not here to be one thing forever. You are here to unfold, to evolve, to awaken and fall asleep and awaken again, each time a little closer to the center of what you've always been. And maybe that's what grief really is, not just mourning someone else, but mourning the versions of you that had to die. The hopeful you, the innocent you, the angry you, the broken you. They were all part of the story, but they are not the whole story. And tonight, as you rest, you can bless them. You can thank the ships that brought you this far, even as they disappeared into the mist. Because you're still sailing, still becoming, still discovering the shape that has no edges. That is the shape of identity. Not a form, but a flow. And as you sink into sleep, you may notice something, a quiet truth rising beneath the waves. You were never becoming someone. You were remembering what can never be lost. And what is remembered can finally be lived. Think about all the versions of you that once existed. The child who believed in magic, the teenager who felt invincible, the one who loved too hard, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace, the dreamer, the fighter, the one who almost gave up. All of them gone. And yet, not really. They live in echoes, in memories that rise like mist when you least expect them, in the way your voice softens in certain moments, in the choices you make without knowing why. You carry them like fossils in your soul, not as weight, but as whispers. They shape the path you walk now, but they are not the path. Because the path isn't fixed. It's drawn beneath your feet as you walk, each step a choice, each choice a becoming. And this is the beauty of identity. It moves, it breathes. It sheds old skin not because it was wrong, but because it was complete. And when you understand this, something shifts. You stop clinging to past versions of yourself. You stop judging the person you were, or trying to be the person you thought you should have become. You start holding your history with grace, because you see it for what it is. Not a prison, but a path. Not a verdict, but a transformation. You were never meant to stay the same. You are a living question, and that question is not, who am I? It's, what am I becoming? And not in a future tense way, but right now, in this moment. What are you becoming with each breath, with each softening, with each step toward presence? You're not just remembering who you are, you're creating it, you're shaping the shape of you. And it's not about perfection. It's about honesty, integrity, alignment. It's about feeling the space between what no longer fits and what hasn't yet arrived, and learning to breathe in that space, to be still in that space, to trust that becoming is not something you do, it's something you allow, like a wave returning to the ocean, like a bud opening toward the sun. It happens when the time is right. You can't rush it, you can only listen. Feel. Surrender. And maybe you've noticed that in the moments when you stop trying to be someone, something sacred arises, a lightness, a clarity, a presence, because all the pressure to be this or that begins to fall away, and in that falling away you feel it again. That presence we've spoken of, the one watching the change, unmoved, unshaken. Always here. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't need one. It's not interested in your success or your failure, it simply is. And the more you rest in that presence, the more you realize you are not your past, you are not your roles, you are not your mistakes. You are the space they passed through. You are the silence that held the noise. You are the awareness behind the mask. And when you know that, you can wear any mask you choose. Not to deceive, but to express, to dance, to create, to love, because you no longer believe the mask is you. You know better now. You've seen behind the curtain, and what you found was not a final answer, but a living mystery, a flowing essence, a self that cannot be pinned down, only experienced, like a river, like fire, like music played just once and never again. That's what you are. Not a fixed identity, but a fluid unfolding, and that means you are free. Free to evolve, free to begin again, free to change your mind, free to choose a new shape, a new rhythm, a new name if you want, because none of it was ever truly fixed. The shape of identity is not a cage. It's a wave, rising, falling, returning, and beneath all those waves is the ocean. Still, deep, infinite, and when you rest in that ocean, when you stop trying to be the wave, you don't disappear, you expand. You realize you've never been separate from anything, not from the people you loved, not from the ones you lost, not from the world that sometimes felt too heavy. It was all inside you all along. And now, you remember. You remember that nothing is missing, that you are not behind, that you are not broken, you are becoming. Again, still, always. And as you lie here, breathing gently, let that remembering carry you. Let it wrap around you like a blanket. Let it whisper to every part of you that thought it had to fight to be worthy. You already are, exactly as you are. Not despite the change, but because of it. Not despite the forgetting, but because you remembered. This is the shape of identity, not a solid thing to protect, but a sacred space to explore, and every time you forget, every time you fall into the old story, you can return, here, now, to this breath, this presence, this truth. You were never the ship, you were the sea. When you realize you're the sea, something subtle but life-changing begins to happen. You stop fighting the waves. You stop clinging to the idea that there's a real version of you waiting to be discovered, like some perfect sculpture buried under the rubble of your life. Instead, you begin to see that your identity was never meant to be found. It was always meant to be created, lived. And like waves, you rise and fall through different moments, different roles, different understandings. One day strong, the next day soft. One day certain, the next unsure, and all of it is still you. There is no version you have to become to be worthy of love. There is no final version of you that needs to be reached for your existence to have meaning. You are not a problem to solve, you are a process to be witnessed. And the moment you allow that, you begin to meet yourself with more compassion, not because you have all the answers, but because you no longer need them. You realize that your humanity isn't a flaw, it's the very expression of your divinity, messy, complex, ever-changing, yet somehow always guided. And maybe that's the thread you've been looking for, not a fixed essence, but a presence, a quiet intelligence that weaves through every version of you. a kind of sacred continuity that doesn't live in your name or your past or your reflection, but in your awareness. The way you notice the world, the way you return to stillness, the way something in you keeps choosing love even after pain. That is the shape of your identity, not a form, but a frequency, not a destination, but a direction. And the more you move in that direction, the more you follow what feels aligned, true, alive, the more at home you feel in yourself, not because you've finally become someone, but because you've stopped needing to. You've stopped needing to hold yourself together in the way the world told you to. You've stopped needing to define yourself in rigid terms. You've started allowing your identity to breathe, to expand, to evolve, and with that evolution comes something sacred, grace. You start holding your past selves not with shame, but with gratitude. You start seeing your growth not as proof of where you were broken, but as evidence of where you were brave. Every version of you, trying, reaching, becoming, even when you didn't know it, even when it felt like falling apart. You were growing, you are growing. And growth doesn't always look like movement. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like silence, like pausing long enough to feel what's really happening underneath the surface. That stillness, that pause, is not emptiness. It's a seed, a moment before the unfolding, a breath before the next becoming. So take that breath now. Feel it in your body. Let it expand through your chest, your ribs, your belly. Let it remind you that you are not frozen. You are in motion. Even here, even now. You are not stuck. You are simply between shapes. And in this in-between space, something new is forming, something quieter, something truer. Let yourself trust it. Let yourself trust that you don't need to know what comes next in order to belong to the moment you're in. Let yourself soften the need to figure it all out, because you won't, not fully, not ever. That's not failure, that's freedom. The river doesn't stop to draw a map of its curves before it flows. The fire doesn't need a reason to burn, and you don't need a definition to exist. You are allowed to be unclear. You are allowed to not know. You are allowed to unfold in the dark, because that's how light is born, in silence, in mystery, in the gentle willingness to let go of the known in order to feel what's real. And what's real doesn't need to be named, it just needs to be lived. So live. Live without rushing, live without forcing, live without trying to wear a mask that no longer fits. Because the truest version of you isn't hiding, it's waiting. Waiting for you to stop pretending. Waiting for you to stop shrinking. Waiting for you to trust that your becoming doesn't need to look like anyone else's. You are not here to be like them, you are here to be like you. Even if that you changes every day, especially if it does, because that's what makes you real, not consistency, but authenticity, not sameness, but sincerity. And in that sincerity, something incredible opens. You start to feel safe inside your own skin, not because it never changes, but because you've made peace with the change. You start to feel free inside your own life, not because it's perfect, but because you've stopped waiting for it to be. This is the shape of identity. Alive, imperfect, evolving, and always enough. You are not here to arrive at a final version of yourself. You are here to evolve, gently, endlessly, like a tide that keeps returning yet never looks quite the same. Each day, each breath, each choice, it carves a new shape into you, not to erase what came before, but to layer it, to deepen it, to make your being more complete, not in its perfection, but in its wholeness. Because you are not fragments stitched together, you are a single flowing movement, a becoming, and yet there's a part of you that never changes, a steady flame behind the winds of thought and memory. You've felt it, haven't you, in the quiet moments when everything else falls away, in that long pause before sleep takes you, when the world fades and you're no longer anyone doing anything. In that stillness, you are, not as a role, not as a name, but as awareness itself, the one who has watched every story pass, the one who has felt every version of you rise and fall like the phases of the moon, still here, still breathing, still listening, and maybe this is the greatest gift of all, to know that you are not the story but the page, not the music but the silence it arises from, and in that knowing, you are free. Free to grieve who you've been without clinging to it. Free to imagine who you could be without fearing the unknown. Free to forgive yourself, not just for what you've done, but for who you once thought you had to be. Because every version of you, even the ones you outgrew, were sacred. There were necessary steps across the river of becoming. And if you look back, not with judgment, but with gentleness, you'll see it. The innocence behind your mistakes, the strength behind your survival, the beauty in your unbecoming. It's all been leading you here, not to a conclusion, but to this breath, this presence, this moment, where you can finally rest from the chase to define yourself. There's nothing left to prove, not to them, not to yourself. Because identity was never meant to be a static sculpture. It's a song that remixes itself each time you live more fully, and some days that song is soft and tender, other days it's fierce and wild, and all of it is real, all of it is true, not in the logical sense, but in the soulful sense, because you were never just one thing. You are multiplicity in motion. You are a symphony of selves, overlapping, evolving, returning home. You are the child and the elder, the seeker and the knower, the wave and the ocean, and you don't need to choose. You were never meant to. All you have to do is listen. Listen to what your soul is whispering through the noise. Sometimes it says, let go. Sometimes it says, begin again. And sometimes it simply says, be here. No agenda, no identity to maintain, just presence, just life. And the deeper you listen, the more you realize. Your identity isn't found by looking outward, it's revealed by softening inward. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about shedding what you're not. Until what remains is so true, so whole, so unmistakably you, that you don't have to try to be anything anymore, you simply are. And there's peace in that. Not the peace of resolution, but the peace of reunion. You, meeting yourself. You no longer resisting the shape your spirit is taking. You no longer trying to force it into something smaller, something safer, something more acceptable. Because the most sacred identity you can ever hold is the one that's honest, the one that breathes, the one that listens, the one that changes without apology. So tonight, as your body softens and your breath slows, let that identity hold you. Let it wrap around you like something soft and familiar. You don't have to carry all the old definitions anymore. You don't have to fight to stay the same. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to be fluid. You are allowed to live in the in-between spaces, where nothing is certain but everything is alive. And maybe that's where the truth has always lived, not in the answers, but in the unfolding, not in the form, but in the freedom, not in the label, but in the light that shines beneath it. That light is you. Always was, always will be. You've come so far without even realizing it, not across a map, but through yourself, through the winding pathways of your own becoming. And maybe now, for the first time in a long time, you can pause, not because you've reached the end, but because you no longer need to rush toward anything. You can just be here, breathing, being, becoming. There is no arrival, only unfolding, no final shape, only movement. And within that movement, there is music, subtle, sacred, unrepeatable. Your identity is not a fixed sculpture to guard and polish. It's a dance, sometimes elegant, sometimes chaotic, but always yours, always true to this moment. And that's the beauty. The shape of who you are isn't rigid, it bends with the seasons of your life. With grief it breaks open, With love it stretches wider. With loss it reshapes itself around the emptiness, not to close it but to hold it more gently. And with awakening it becomes light. You are not a fixed point in time. You are a process. You are unfolding. You are healing. You are remembering. You are forgetting. You are learning how to be soft again, to be whole again, to be okay with not knowing. And somewhere in that mystery, identity becomes something holy, not because you've figured it out, but because you've stopped needing to. Now you listen instead of explain. You feel instead of fix. You hold instead of push. And when the past versions of you come to visit, as they will, you don't reject them. You don't shame them. You invite them in. You offer them tea. You sit with their fears, their questions, their wide-eyed wonder. Because you know now. They weren't wrong. They were just early chapters. And each chapter served its purpose. Each name you carried, each belief you wore like armor, each mask you tried on, hoping to feel safe. All of it, part of the design. And even if the mask no longer fits, even if the armor has grown heavy, you can thank it. You can lay it down without guilt. Because what waits beyond the mask is you. And you're ready to meet yourself. Not the version that tries to be everything for everyone. Not the one that bends to fit the mold, but the version that simply is. Raw, present, unfolding. You've always been this, haven't you? Even when you didn't know it, even when the noise of the world told you otherwise, that quiet self inside has always watched, always waited, always loved. And now you've come home to it, not through effort, but through surrender. Through allowing, through sitting with the paradox of identity long enough to see that it was never meant to resolve, only to reveal. Reveal that you are not one thing, you are many, and none of them cancel the others out. You are the child and the elder, the healer and the wounded, the fire and the ash, the ocean and the sky, the stillness and the song. And all of it is sacred. All of it belongs. So let it belong, let it be whole, let it live inside you without needing to make sense. And as the waves of thought rise and fall, as your breath deepens, as the world outside slows to a hush, let yourself drift. Not away from who you are, but into it, into the open field where identity dances with mystery, where every part of you is welcome, where nothing is final, and everything is allowed. This is the shape of identity. Not a border, but a rhythm. Not a cage, but a canvas. And you, with your dreams and doubts and golden heart, are the artist. You are the brushstroke and the color. You are the space and the spark. You are not here to get it right. You're here to feel it fully, and to trust, with every softening breath, that whatever shape you take next will be true, will be yours, will be beautiful, because it was born from presence and shaped by love. Time. It feels so solid, doesn't it? So certain. You wake, you live, you sleep. Another day passes. The past behind you, the future ahead. That's the shape we've been taught. A line, a timeline. But what if time isn't a line at all? What if it's more like a spiral, or a sea? Something you're floating in, not moving through. And if that's true, then everything changes. Because if time bends, if it loops, if it folds back on itself, then what you thought was cause and effect might only be memory. What you thought was destiny might only be choice you already made. Let's begin with the paradox, one that's puzzled philosophers, physicists, and dreamers alike. The grandfather paradox. Imagine for a moment that time travel is real, and you somehow go back into the past, back to a time before you were born, and in that past something happens. You interfere, you change an event, you prevent your own grandfather from meeting your grandmother, and now, suddenly, you were never born. But if you were never born, who went back to change the past? Do you vanish? Does reality collapse? Or was it always meant to happen this way? This is the grandfather paradox, a loop with no clear entry point, a contradiction that breaks the logic of linear time. But don't let your mind rush to solve it. Instead, feel into it. Feel how time loses its edges the more closely you examine it. It's not meant to make sense in the way we've been taught, because what we call time is really just our perception of change, of movement, of memory. And memory is not always reliable. You've felt that before. The strange fluidity of time when you're dreaming, when minutes feel like lifetimes, when you wake up breathless, wondering how something so vast could fit inside a single sleep. Have you ever dreamed an entire relationship? An entire world? Have you ever lived 1,000 emotions inside a few seconds, and then, in an instant, it's gone? That's not imagination, that's experience. And your mind struggles to place it, to file it under just a dream, but something inside you knows. That time in dreams doesn't obey the same rules. It bends, it folds, it suspends. And if it can do that while you sleep, what makes you think it doesn't do that when you're awake? Because time is not something outside of you, it's something your consciousness interacts with. Shapes, translates, interprets. And the more awake you become, the more you notice time isn't consistent. It speeds up when you're anxious, slows down when you're present, disappears completely when you're in awe. And when you really drop into the moment, not the clock but the now, time dissolves, and something else appears in its place. Stillness. Eternity. The eternal now. This is what spiritual teachers across ages have pointed to. Not a future salvation, but a present realization. Neville Goddard called it the eternal present. He said that imagination is the only reality, and that every future you could ever desire already exists, not in some far-off tomorrow, but now, right now, already real, in the field of possibility. And your role is not to wait for it, but to feel it, to assume it, to embody the version of you who already lives there. Because if time is not a line, then who you are is not fixed, and the future is not later, it's now, waiting for you to tune into it. The Bhagavad Gita speaks this same truth in different language. Krishna tells Arjuna, I am time, the destroyer of worlds, but also, the soul is never born and never dies. If that's true, then who are you? If the soul has no beginning, no end, no time-bound form, then you are not the person you see in the mirror, you are not the age the calendar claims. You are awareness itself, flowing in and out of moments, dreaming yourself into form, not bound by time, but wrapped in it like a cloak. And when that cloak falls away, whether in sleep, in death, or in awakening, you return to something timeless, something you've always been and will always be. So, if time is not what you thought, if the future and past are simply points of focus, then maybe your healing is not somewhere ahead of you. Maybe it's already here. Maybe your transformation doesn't need time, it needs attention. Because attention is the true currency of reality. Where you place it becomes real. What you withdraw it from begins to fade. And when you withdraw your attention from the illusion of time, even for a moment, something miraculous happens. You remember. You remember that you are not running out of time. You are not late. You are not stuck in the past. You are not racing toward the future. You are standing in eternity, right now, breathing, not waiting, but awakening. You are not a creature of time. You are the witness of it. The same way you watch clouds drift across the sky, you watch time move across your awareness. But the sky is not the cloud, and you are not the clock. Time is the rhythm of the world you move through, but it isn't the rhythm of your being, because your being doesn't tick. It pulses, it expands, it listens. It remembers itself not by years, but by presence, by depth, by love. Think of the moments that changed you, not the ones marked by a calendar, but the ones that marked your soul. The way a single conversation rewired your entire worldview. The way one heartbreak stretched you open in ways a decade never could. The way a second of eye contact could echo through your bones for years. That's not time measured by hours, that's time measured by truth. And the more you live from that truth, the more time begins to soften. It's no longer a wall that separates past from future. It's a curtain. And sometimes the curtain parts. You feel a presence from your childhood, a smell, a sound, a feeling you can't place. Or you remember a dream that hasn't happened yet, or you sense that your future self is calling to you, not with words, but with vibration. You know the path you're meant to walk, because you've already walked it, somewhere outside of time. And your job now is to follow the echo, not to force it, not to rush it, just to stay close to the feeling, the resonance. Because resonance is the language of timelessness. When something resonates, you're not just responding to it now, you're remembering it across dimensions. You're syncing with the version of you who already lives there, already healed, already home, and that version isn't far away. It's right here, closer than breath, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to pause long enough to feel. Because time doesn't separate you from your wholeness, your attention does. And the moment you bring your attention to now, not the idea of now, but the lived experience of it, time falls away, and what remains is eternity. Not a blank space, not an emptiness, but a fullness, a peace, a knowing that all is well, that you've never been behind, that you've never lost your way, you've only lost your awareness of it, but now it's returning, because the more you listen, the more you feel it. This life is not linear. This self is not fixed. This world is not as solid as it appears, and what you thought was real, time, was only habit, only structure, only a container for a deeper unfolding. So now, step outside the container, gently. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to fight the clock. Just breathe. Let the breath remind you that presence is always immediate. Let it remind you that your power is not in the future. It's not in what might happen. It's in what you choose to embody right now. The more you embody your highest truth in this moment, the more the illusion of time bends around you. Things begin to unfold faster. You notice synchronicities. You think of someone and they call. You long for clarity, and it arrives not through effort but through surrender. Because in timelessness there is no resistance, only alignment, only flow. And the more you align with your truth, with what you really are, the more time becomes your ally. Not something to fear, not something to fight, but something to ride like a current. And in that current, all versions of you are flowing. The past you, the future you, the ancient soul who's lived 1,000 lives, the eternal presence who holds them all. And when you close your eyes, you can feel them, not as memories, not as fantasies, but as living energies within you, all happening now, all accessible, not through logic, but through presence. Feel, breathe. Feel your breath as the bridge between moments. Feel it as the rhythm that links all versions of you together. You are not a prisoner of time, you are the pulse behind it. And now you remember. You remember now, not with your mind, but with your being, with your breath, with your presence. You remember that time was never the ruler, it was the veil. And now that the veil is lifting, you see more clearly. You see that all your lifetimes are nested within each other like echoes calling forward and backward across the great silence of existence. You feel the version of you who's already healed, already wise, already whole, and you don't have to reach them, you just have to receive them. Because if all time is now, then so is your highest self, so is your awakening, so is your transformation. It's not something that waits for you at the end of a long journey. It's something whispering to you now, through your intuition, through your dreams, through the small nudges that don't make sense until much later, and then suddenly they do. That's how time speaks when you stop trying to hold it still. It moves like a river. It carries messages from upstream, and sometimes those messages arrive before you understand them, but they are never wrong, because in the quantum nature of your being, everything is connected. Every version of you exists simultaneously, and the boundaries between them aren't as thick as you think. You can feel that, can't you? The way sometimes you wake up already changed. The way you suddenly know something you didn't study, didn't read, didn't hear. The way healing arrives not as a gradual process, but as a flash of clarity that rewrites you from the inside out. You don't always know where it comes from, but it comes. And that knowing, that transmission, that's time folding inward. It's the soul reaching across dimensions to deliver exactly what you need before your mind can interfere. Because time is not a gatekeeper, it's a mirror. It reflects your consciousness back to you, not in hours or days or years, but in resonance, in rhythm, in the alignment of your intention with your awareness. And when the two match, when you live the future feeling now, the illusion of delay vanishes. That's what Neville meant when he said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. He wasn't asking you to pretend. He was asking you to collapse the gap between who you are and who you're becoming, because that gap was never real. It was created by thought, by the story that said you are separate from your desire. But you're not. You are one with it, already, now. And the more you surrender into that now, not as a concept, but as a living truth, the more time yields, not because you've conquered it, but because you've stopped resisting it. You've become time's partner, not its prisoner. And that's when the impossible starts to happen, paths open that weren't there before. Synchronicities line up like stars. You meet people at the exact moment you're ready. Doors appear in walls that used to feel permanent. Because time bends to presence, it always has, and the more present you become, the more infinite your life feels. You stop counting hours. You start measuring meaning. You stop chasing moments. You start welcoming miracles. And they come, softly, quietly, unreasonably, not as rewards, but as reminders. Reminders that time is not what you thought. And neither are you. You're not the one moving through life. You're the life it moves through. You are the timeless witness of all form, all change, all memory. You are the sky time passes through, and in that sky, all things are allowed, all things are held, all things are possible. So breathe, and feel time soften. Feel the edges blur. Feel the past, the future, and the present begin to overlap, like transparent layers of the same dream. Not separate, not linear, just unfolding, just now. And when you wake tomorrow, or the next day, or some day far from now, remember this moment, not with your mind, but with your being. Because truth lives in the body before it lives in the thoughts. And what you felt tonight, this peace, this spaciousness, this soft unraveling of time, it's already changing you, already integrating, already anchoring itself in places you can't quite see. So trust it. Trust that you are being guided by something deeper than the clock, something older than the calendar, something wiser than the mind. You are being guided by the rhythm of your own becoming, and that rhythm doesn't rush. It unfolds, it spirals, it circles back only to move you forward, because time is not linear, and neither are you. You've felt it before. That strange déjà vu that leaves you breathless. The way a moment unfolds and something inside whispers, I've been here. But you haven't. Not in this life, not in this body, not on this street, and yet, you know. And maybe that knowing isn't a mistake. Maybe it's your memory reaching across timelines. Maybe it's your soul reminding you that time doesn't separate truth, it only filters how it arrives. And when the filter slips, even just for a moment, you feel it, the timelessness behind your life, the great stillness behind all this movement. It doesn't ask for logic. It doesn't need proof. It speaks in intuition, in the hush between words, in the way your body relaxes when something resonates, even if your mind can't explain why. That resonance is your compass now, not the calendar, not the clock, not the expectations you inherited from a world addicted to urgency. Because your soul doesn't hurry. It opens. And when it opens, fully, truly, deeply, time loses all meaning. Have you ever been with someone you loved, and hours disappeared into laughter? Have you ever watched the sun fall below the horizon and forgotten what day it was? Have you ever sat in silence and felt like the whole universe was breathing with you? That's timelessness. That's the real world beneath the illusion. And you've touched it more times than you realize. Because the real moments, the ones that changed you, didn't happen inside a time slot. They happened in stillness, in presence, in the space beyond the mind. That space is here now. It's always been here. And the more you enter it, not through force, but through surrender, the more reality begins to rearrange itself around you. Because your perception of time is your doorway to creation. What you believe about time becomes your experience of it. If you believe change takes years, it will. If you believe healing is slow, it will be. If you believe awakening is only for some distant future version of you, it will remain distant. But if you believe you can remember the truth in a single breath, if you believe your soul doesn't need permission to arrive fully, if you believe that this moment is already enough, then the whole universe bends to meet you. And it does. Not with noise, but with silence. Not with force, but with grace. Not with thunder, but with a whisper that echoes through your bones. Time is not in control. You are. Not the you that plays the roles, not the you that follows the script, the real you, the you that exists outside of story, the you that was never born and will never die, the you that watches lifetimes like dreams. And when you feel that you, even for a second, something sacred unlocks, you begin to remember that this life is not your prison, it's your palette. You begin to see time not as a deadline, but as a canvas. And you are the painter. You decide what each moment holds, not by forcing it, but by being present with it. You choose how deeply you experience the now, and the deeper you go, the more the lines blur. You meet your future self in the now. You hold your past self in compassion, not memory. You heal wounds not by rewinding time, but by rewriting your presence. Because presence is the only real time. And when you bring presence to pain, pain unravels. When you bring presence to fear, fear dissolves. When you bring presence to possibility, it begins to take form. This is what the mystics meant when they said, "Now is the only time there is." They weren't speaking in riddles, they were offering you the key to unlock a world that exists just beneath this one. A world where time doesn't control you, where the future doesn't haunt you, where the past doesn't define you. A world where you get to begin again. Not tomorrow, not next year, but now. Always now. Because now is all there is. And in this now you are free. Free to feel deeply, free to let go gently, free to remember that nothing real can be lost, and nothing imagined is truly separate. Because time is not your master, it's your mirror, and you, timeless, infinite, beautiful you, are what it reflects. So now the mirror is clear, not because time stopped, but because you stopped chasing it. You stopped trying to be somewhere else. some version else, some day else. And in that stillness something sacred happened. You began to arrive. Not physically, you were always here, but soulfully, fully, honestly. You arrived in your own presence like a traveler who suddenly realizes they've been standing home the entire time, and the world looks different from here. Not because it changed, but because you did. You're not seeing through the eyes of time anymore. You're seeing through the eyes of eternity. And through those eyes, nothing is wasted. No moment, no version of you. No detour or delay or breakdown. It was all part of the rhythm, the spiral, the divine unfolding. Even the parts that hurt, even the pauses you didn't understand. They were not lost time, they were sacred recalibrations, moments when your soul pulled you inward, not to punish, but to prepare, to remind you that your timing is not the world's timing. Because your path is not built in straight lines, it's woven in patterns, in synchronicities, in gentle course corrections from a future you who already knows where you're going. You can feel that version now, not far away, not in the distance, but close, here, inside you, the you that already remembers how to let go, the you that trusts the unknown, the you that doesn't fear change, because they know time is not the enemy, time the invitation to open, to soften, to listen. And when you do, when you listen without needing to fix, without needing to rush, you begin to hear something softer beneath the noise. The subtle music of existence. The quiet hum of your own unfolding. You are not late to anything. You are not behind. You are exactly where the universe needs you to be, not for the sake of a destination, but for the sake of presence. Because something is blooming here, inside this now. Not because it was scheduled, but because you're finally open. You're finally still enough to feel it. And in that stillness you discover the truth. Time doesn't hold you. You hold time. It flows from you, not toward you. And that means you can slow it, you can stretch it. You can bend it, not with your watch, but with your awareness. You've done it before. When you were in love, when you were grieving, when you were meditating, when you were lost in a song, a sunset, a moment so real it made the rest of the world disappear. That's not an illusion. That's reality without resistance. That's you, unshackled from the script of time. And when you're there, you remember you don't have to hold on so tightly. You don't have to fix what happened. You don't have to predict what will. You can just be here, alive in the now. And that is enough. More than enough. Because every future you're longing for, every version of you that seems so far away, is already reaching back, calling you into alignment, not someday, today, in this breath, in this choice to pause and feel. Because feeling is how you move through dimensions. It's how you collapse timelines. It's how you shift from a life lived by default to a life lived on purpose. And that shift doesn't require time. It requires truth. It requires trust. It requires the courage to stop asking when will it happen and start asking how deeply can I receive it now. Because now is the only real moment you'll ever know. And the more you fall into it, gently, honestly, the more everything else begins to fall into place. Not by force, but by resonance. You become a magnet for the moments that match your frequency. Not because you've mastered time, but because you've stopped resisting it. You've remembered how to move with it, and time, in return, begins to move with you. So breathe. Let that knowing settle into your bones. You are not a slave to the ticking clock. You are not trapped in the past. You are not locked out of your future. You are timeless. And in your timelessness, everything is possible. You are timeless. Say it inwardly, gently, not as a concept, but as a feeling. You are timeless. You are not your age, not your milestones, not the stories marked on a timeline. You are the one who watches those stories pass. You are the presence that holds the rise and fall of every version of you. And what a gift that is. To know that nothing is ever lost. Not really. Because every moment, even the ones you thought were gone, still echoes in you, still lives in your field, still shapes your now, not as chains, but as threads. Threads of learning. Threads of remembrance. Threads of becoming. And when you gather them gently, not to pull them tight, but to see their pattern, you begin to understand what time has really been doing. It's been weaving you, shaping your edges, then softening them again, breaking you open not to destroy, but to make room. Room for more presence, more truth, more of the light that has always been inside you, waiting, because it knew. It knew that one day you would stop running toward the future. It knew you would stop trying to edit the past, and you would sit down in the quiet of your own breath and simply arrive. Fully. Now. And when you arrive, time lets go. It bows to your stillness. It releases its grip because it was never holding you. It was waiting for you to notice the truth, that the clock doesn't measure your life. Your love does. Your presence does. Your willingness to feel this moment completely. And this moment is vast. It holds the past you thought you lost. It holds the future you long to live. It holds all of it, here, now, breathing with you, not in ideas, not in imagination, but in energy. Because your soul has never lived in time. It only plays there for a little while. And now, the game has changed. You no longer believe the illusion. You see beyond it. You feel what's real. You know that the present is more than a second between past and future. It's the portal, the gateway, the truth behind the dream. And when you stand fully in the present without looking forward or back, reality reshapes itself. The pain you carried softens, the pressure to become dissolves, the weight of waiting disappears, because there's nothing left to wait for. Everything you need is already inside you, already blooming, the natural state of the sun, the way silence is the natural state of space, the way love is the natural state of your soul. This is what time cannot touch. This is what remains when everything else falls away. This is what you are. And from this place, you don't need to rush. You don't need to fix. You don't need to become. You simply allow. Allow the moment. Allow the unfolding. Allow the now to deepen. And as it deepens, it carries you. Not forward, not back, but inward. To the still point, the center of the spiral. The place where all time collapses into truth, where all versions of you become one, whole, eternal, here. So breathe, soft and slow, and let it settle. Let your nervous system feel the permission to be timeless, to rest from the noise, to let go of the chase, and to remember, you were never on a clock. You were on a path. And the path was never about getting there. It was always about becoming here. What if none of this is real? Not in the way you've been taught to think of real. Not in the way your senses insist things must be. Solid, measurable, predictable. But what if this is something else entirely? What if you're in a kind of dream, a simulation, a beautifully complex game designed not to trick you but to teach you? Not a conspiracy, not a glitch, but a sacred simulation. One made of thoughts and feelings, patterns and energy. Designed with love. You've felt it before, haven't you? That strange awareness that the world around you is just a little too synchronized. Focus. You think of someone, and they message you. You imagine an outcome, and somehow the pieces begin to fall into place. You change your inner world, and the outer one follows. Almost like it's updating in real time, almost like it's responding to your code. And maybe that's exactly what's happening. Maybe the world around you isn't a fixed reality. Maybe it's a kind of spiritual software, and your consciousness is the operating system. Imagine this for a moment. Imagine you're wearing a headset you've forgotten is there. A perfect simulation. So immersive, so convincing that you begin to believe the world it shows you is the only one that exists. You see things, you touch them, you taste, you move, you feel. And yet, it's all being rendered, all being projected. Not from outside you, but from within. What if your senses are the interface? What if your thoughts are the commands? What if your emotions are the feedback system, showing you how in or out of alignment you are with the deeper reality? And what if, most importantly, the suffering you've experienced wasn't punishment, but misalignment in the code you were meant to rewrite, not with guilt, but with awareness? What if your fear, your grief, your frustration was just corrupted data, temporary distortions in a system that's always trying to return you to truth? Because this isn't just a dream, it's a designed dream, a living, breathing simulation that's been crafted to respond to one thing above all else: consciousness. Your consciousness. You are the observer, the dreamer inside the dream, and when you shift, everything shifts. But most forget. They fall so deeply into the simulation that they forget it's a simulation. They begin to believe that the world is solid and separate, that what they see is all there is, that change only happens slowly externally through effort and control. But the mystics have always said otherwise. They've always whispered the deeper truth, that this is illusion, Maya, the veil, not to dismiss reality, but to wake you up inside it, to show you that there is more, not out there, but in here, inside your perception, inside your ability to shift focus, to raise frequency, to question what you're told is real, because reality is fluid. It's not built from matter, it's built from mind. Even science is catching up to what sages have known for centuries. That observation changes outcome. That attention collapses probability. That the world isn't fixed until you look at it. And even then it's only fixed according to the expectations you bring. Just like a game that adapts to your input. A world that changes when you begin to remember that it's not the whole of existence. It's a mirror, a projection, a feedback loop. And the loop becomes clearer the more conscious you are. What you fear grows. What you love expands. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms. These are not metaphors, they're mechanics, rules of the simulation. And those rules are soft. They bend when you become lucid. When you begin to see that you're not just the character, you're the player. You're the awareness that's choosing this experience for a reason, a purpose, not to suffer, but to awaken, to explore, to learn. And maybe most importantly, to remember that you are not inside a world. The world is inside you, not in a poetic way, in a literal, energetic, perceptual way. As Deepak Chopra once said, consciousness is the ground of all being, not matter, not time, not space, consciousness, and everything else, even this moment, is arising inside it. So when you close your eyes, does the world disappear? Not for everyone, but for you, it kind of does. And that's a clue, a sacred one, that the world you see is not out there. It's being rendered here, inside your nervous system, inside your awareness, inside the simulation, not to trap you but to reflect you, to give you something to touch so you can learn what it means to feel, to give you something to lose so you can learn what it means to love, to give you limits so you can remember that you're limitless. And that remembering is the whole point. That remembering is the key. The moment you begin to question the solidity of what you call real, the code loosens. The moment you choose to see suffering not as a sentence, but as a signal, the loop weakens. And when you finally look around eyes wide open, heart aware, and whisper to yourself, "I think this might be a dream." Everything changes, not because the world vanishes, but because you stop mistaking it for all there is, and in that shift, your power returns. Not power over others, not control over events, but the deeper power, the kind that shapes what the simulation reflects back to you, because this program runs on resonance, on frequency, and your frequency is shaped by your inner state. Your beliefs are not passive thoughts floating through a mind. They're blueprints. They write the laws of your personal reality. Change a belief, and the simulation shifts. Not always instantly, not always obviously, but always subtly, steadily, meaningfully, like a dream that listens to your emotional tone and rewrites the story accordingly. So ask yourself gently, what kind of simulation have you been living in? What rules have you unknowingly agreed to? That change is hard, that love must be earned, that you're not enough, that the world is separate from you? What if none of that was written in stone? What if it was all just code? Code that came from old pain, old voices, old versions of you that didn't know how powerful you really were. And what if, right now, with nothing but awareness, you could begin to rewrite it, not all at once, but moment by moment, by choosing new thoughts, by embodying new feelings, by saying to the mirror of the simulation, "I remember who I am now." Not the character, but the creator. Not the code, but the consciousness behind it. And when you remember that, when you feel it in your breath, in your stillness, in the way your body softens into knowing, the dream responds. The world changes shape, not because it was against you, but because it was always waiting for you to awaken, to participate, to co-create. And now you are. With every gentle shift in perception, with every breath that holds presence instead of panic, with every choice to believe in something higher, softer, freer, you are rewriting the dream. And the dream is listening, always. You don't have to escape the simulation. You're not trapped. You're not imprisoned. You're immersed. On purpose. You chose to play, to learn, to remember. And now that you are remembering, everything begins to open. You feel more space between thoughts, more peace between moments, more joy in the small, ordinary magic of being alive. Not because the simulation has changed, but because your consciousness has. You've gone lucid. You're awake inside the dream. And from here you get to choose. Choose the responses. Choose the meaning. Not in a way that denies what's hard or painful, but in a way that finally sees it clearly, as data, as code, as feedback. And with that clarity you can change it. You can write softer rules. Rules that make space for grace. Rules that allow you to heal without shame. Rules that bend reality toward compassion. Because this isn't a test, it's an invitation to live awake, to feel with depth, to create with love, and to remember, always, that the simulation is not separate from the soul, it's an expression of it. You are dreaming this world into being, and the more you love what you dream, the more beautiful it becomes. Imagine a cat in a box, sealed, silent, unseen. Inside the box is a strange experiment, a setup where, according to quantum theory, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. Not metaphorically, literally, alive and dead, until you open the box. Until you observe it. Until your act of looking collapses the uncertainty into a single reality. This is Schrödinger's cat. It's not about the cat, it's about you. It's about the relationship between awareness and existence. It's about what happens when you stop assuming that things are only real once they're seen, and start wondering if they only become real because they're seen. Let that settle, because the world you think you live in might not exist the way you believe it does, not until you look at it, not until you bring attention to it, not until you observe. And before you do, everything is possibility. Pure potential. The cat is not one thing, it's both, it's neither, it's waiting, and so is your reality, waiting to be chosen. waiting to be observed into form. You may think the world is fixed, that what's behind the door is already there, that what tomorrow brings is already written, but what if it isn't? What if it's waiting, just like the cat, for you to open the box? What if your future is in superposition, not one outcome, but all outcomes, waiting for your attention to choose the timeline? Quantum mechanics tells us that particles, the building blocks of your body, your home, your thoughts, don't take a fixed position until they're measured, until they're observed, until they're witnessed. And that witnessing, that collapse of probability into certainty, is what we call reality. But what if reality is just the tip of the iceberg? What if everything you don't see is still there, swirling in the invisible, waiting to be shaped? And what if your awareness is the sculptor? Every dream you haven't yet dared to believe, every version of you you've not yet stepped into, every miracle, every possibility, every parallel path, all in superposition, all waiting, not for permission, but for presence, for you to look, to feel, to choose, because your life is not a script, it's a wave, and the moment you observe it, it collapses into a point, but before that collapse, it's infinite. You are infinite, and the quantum world proves it. This isn't philosophy, this is physics. Wave-particle duality. A particle, a thing you can touch, can also behave like a wave of energy. Light, for example. When no one watches, it moves like a wave. Free, fluid, multiple paths at once. But when it's observed, it chooses. It becomes a particle, it collapses, and that collapse is what you call real. So what does that mean for you? What are you when no one's watching? When no eye is upon you? No mirror? No judgment? Are you still form? Or are you something else entirely? A wave of potential, a field of energy not yet shaped by attention? And if you are, then who do you become when you look at yourself? Not in judgment, but in awe, in curiosity, in love. You collapse yourself into being. You choose a form, you choose an identity, not once, but every moment. And that means nothing about you is final, nothing is stuck, nothing is fixed, unless you keep observing it the same way. What if your limitations are simply particles that have collapsed from years of habitual observation? What if your pain is a wave that can be reshaped? What if who you are is still becoming? And the only thing that holds you back is the belief that you already know what's in the box. The measurement problem, it's a term physicists use. It describes the mystery of how observing something forces it to decide what it is. And we don't know why. We just know that consciousness, your awareness, does something to the field. It makes the invisible choose a shape. It makes the wave pick a path. And so you wonder, am I doing that all the time? Am I shaping my world by where I place my gaze? Am I locking possibilities out because I refuse to look beyond what I expect? What if the way you look at your life is the most powerful force in the universe? What if you could soften that gaze, loosen your grip, shift your angle, and allow the wave to reform? You don't have to force it. You just have to stop assuming it's already collapsed, because maybe the version of you long to become isn't far away. Maybe they already exist, not in the future, but in potential, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be felt, waiting to be seen, not out there, in here, in the infinite inner field where everything still floats as possibility, where the cat is both, where you are both, the scared one and the brave one, the broken one and the healer, the lost one and the guide. You are all of them. Until you observe, until you collapse one reality into being, but you can choose again. The universe allows it, the quantum field encourages it, and the soul already knows how. Your soul already knows how to choose again, not because it understands quantum physics, but because it understands freedom. It knows that at any moment you can shift, that no identity is permanent, that no situation is beyond transformation. Not because you force it to change, but because you stop assuming it can't, and suddenly the wave returns. The possibility reappears, the cat becomes bold again, and your life, the one you thought was stuck, predictable, fated, begins to shimmer with new potential, not because the world changed, but because your gaze did. You stopped looking through the lens of certainty. You started looking with presence, with curiosity, with wonder. And that's what invites the wave back in. That's what makes space for the unknown to become real. Because maybe the universe doesn't want you to figure it out. Maybe it wants you to feel your way through it, like light through a prism, like a particle that remembers it's also a wave. It's like a soul that remembers it's also a mystery. You are not here to collapse reality into something fixed and final. You're here to dance with it, to collapse and uncollapse, to choose and unchoose, to remember that what feels certain today might dissolve tomorrow. And that's not failure, that's freedom. Freedom to evolve, to wake up, to change your angle, and in doing so to change the entire pattern of your world. Because quantum law doesn't wait for approval. It responds to awareness. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to understand it. You just have to remember that your attention is creative. Your perception is a sculptor. And every time you choose presence over prediction, you return to the field. The pure field of potential, where nothing is locked and everything is waiting. Waiting for you to look with new eyes. Waiting for you to see beyond your fear, beyond your doubt, beyond your history. Waiting for you to believe again, not in a specific outcome, but in the fact that possibility still exists, that mystery still lives, that you are still free to choose a new collapse, and a new one after that. Because the truth is, you are not here to find one final answer. You're here to ask better questions, more beautiful ones, more honest ones, like, what would love do here? What if I'm more than I thought? What if this breakdown is also a breakthrough? What if I'm allowed to not know? What if not knowing is holy? And as you ask those questions, you'll notice something subtle begin to shift. The edges of your world soften. The rules feel less rigid. The path in front of you begins to open, not because it wasn't there before, but because you finally stopped collapsing the same outcome over and over again. You released the grip. You let the wave return, and the wave carries you forward, not with a map, but with a rhythm, a feeling, a resonance that says this way. And when you follow that feeling, even if you don't know where it leads, you find yourself becoming something new, not by effort, by allowing, by receiving, by dancing with the quantum truth of who you are, both wave and particle, both question and answer, both seeker and source. You don't need to choose between them. You already are all of it, and the universe knows it. The field reflects it, and the moment holds it. So breathe gently. Feel your way back into possibility, back into superposition, back into the freedom of not knowing, because that space of not knowing is sacred. It's not a void, it's a womb, and everything beautiful begins there, even you, especially you. You are not just a part, you are the whole. Let that truth move through you, not like an idea, but like a memory. A soft remembering that maybe, just maybe, you were never separate. Not from the world, not from others, not from the divine. You were just a piece that forgot it was the pattern, a spark that forgot it was the flame, a wave that forgot it was the ocean. But now, you begin to remember, and the remembering begins quietly, like a hum beneath the noise, like a voice that sounds like your own but older, wider, deeper. It says, "Look again." And so you do. You look at yourself not as a fragment, but as a fractal, a reflection of something infinite, a sliver of a hologram that somehow still contains the whole. Science calls it the holographic principle, the idea that every part contains the pattern of the whole system. Cut a hologram in half and each half still contains the whole image. Cut it again, and the whole remains, not in size, but in essence, in code, in truth. And so do you. You contain the pattern of the universe, not as metaphor, but as structure, as being. The spiral in your DNA is the same spiral found in galaxies. The electric hum of your heartbeat echoes the pulse of stars. You're not a passenger on Earth. You're Earth, dreaming of being a person. You're not just in the universe. The universe is in you. Every cell in your body hums with memory. Not just your memory, but memory itself. Cosmic memory, consciousness memory, the memory of oneness pretending to be many. And when you slow down enough to feel it, the illusion begins to crack. You notice that the boundary between me and not me is softer than it seems. You begin to wonder if your thoughts are really yours, or if you're tuning into them like frequencies. You begin to question if your pain is just yours, or if you're processing something collective, something ancestral, something human. And in that wondering, something opens. A doorway in your perception. You feel the edges of yourself dissolve, not in fear, but in wonder. Because what if you've never truly been separate? What if every face you've ever loved was another reflection of you? What if every path you've ever walked was a homecoming? What if every moment of loneliness was just your soul calling itself back together? And what if the entire world, the stars, the silence, the story, has always been inside you? Not metaphorically, energetically, holographically. You don't need to go anywhere to find truth. The truth, discovering itself in layers. And with every layer you peel back, every belief you question, every fear you face, every boundary you soften, you touch the whole. You awaken the code. You rejoin the rhythm. Because you are not just dreaming. You are dreaming yourself. Just like in a lucid dream, where you wake up inside the dream and realize you are the dreamer. Advaita Vedanta speaks to this. The non-dual teachings. They whisper, you are not the person in the dream, you are the dreamer, and the dream, and the awareness that watches both. And when you hear that, something in you quiets, because deep down you've always known. You've always sensed that this reality, this waking life, is not the whole story. You've seen it in the way dreams blur with memory. You've felt it in the moments between sleep and waking, when the edges dissolve and everything feels real and unreal at once. You've touched it in meditation, in heartbreak, in stillness. That feeling that nothing is quite as solid as you once believed, that maybe this life is not happening to you, but through you, as you, and you are not just the actor on the stage. You are the writer, the spotlight, and the silent audience watching with love. You are all of it, the self dreaming the self. And now you remember, not as a theory, not as a mystical fantasy, but as the quietest truth, the one that doesn't need to be proven, only felt. And the more you feel it, the more the illusion of division begins to fall away. The illusion of separation begins to fall away, not with thunder, not with lightning, but with a whisper. A soft peeling back of the veil, like fog dissolving under morning light. Like waking from a dream you didn't know you were dreaming. And in that quiet return you begin to see it clearly, that the world outside is not really outside at all. It's a projection, a reflection, an extension of your own consciousness turned inside out. You feel the tree and you feel yourself. You hear the rain and it echoes in your chest. You see another's eyes and something in you recognizes home. Because what you call the world is not separate from your awareness of it. It arises with you, moves with you, changes as you change. Just like a lucid dream, The scenery shifts when you shift your state. The story bends when you choose a different emotion. And the people, the characters who enter and exit, often mirror something you didn't even know you were carrying. They show you your light, your shadow, your unspoken needs, your unhealed edges, not to hurt you but to reflect you, to guide you deeper into your own wholeness. That's what a hologram does. It doesn't just show you an image, it shows you a pattern. And in that pattern is everything. Everything you've ever been, everything you've ever avoided, everything you've forgotten you are. And when you see it clearly, not with your eyes, but with your awareness, the game changes. You no longer react to the world as something out there. You begin to listen to it like a dream. Every symbol matters. Every moment has meaning, even the ordinary ones, especially the ordinary ones, because the soul speaks through subtlety, through feeling, through the little alignments that only make sense when you stop rushing. When you pause long enough to notice that the timing was perfect, the words were precise, the sign was placed just for you, and it was, because the dream is yours, the field is yours, and everything within it, every sound, every face, every echo, is a message from you to you. Not to trick, to wake, to call you home, home to the truth that you were never just a person inside a world. You are the awareness, holding it all. And when you really feel that, not as concept but as experience, something happens inside you. A soft crumbling of defenses, a quiet unhooking from the need to figure it all out, because you realize the part of you that's seeking is already the source. You are not looking for the divine. You are what the divine looks like when it dreams. And the dream is getting clearer now, because you're beginning to remember the language of energy, the language of resonance, the silent knowing that says this feels true, even when it can't be explained, even when the mind resists, even when logic says no. Because the hologram doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in alignment. It speaks in harmony. And when your inner world softens, the hologram responds. It shifts, it brightens, it becomes more fluid, less fixed, because it always reflects the self you bring to it. So bring the self that remembers. Bring the self that trusts. Bring the self that is not defined by the past, not confined by the future, not trapped in an identity. Bring the self that watches, that allows, that loves, because love is the true pattern, the true code beneath the simulation, not love as a feeling, love as a frequency, as a way of seeing, as the recognition that everything, even the pain, even the chaos, is part of the same infinite dance, one dream, one pattern, one being playing hide and seek with itself. And you are both the hider and the seeker, both the mirror and the face, both the question and the answer. And that paradox is not a problem. It's the doorway. It's the riddle that opens the gate. Because when you stop trying to solve it and start learning to live it, you find peace. Not the peace of having it all figured out, but the deeper peace of knowing you don't have to. You just have to feel it, to remember it, to rest in it, because the whole is already inside you. The whole is already inside you. You don't have to find it. You don't have to reach for it. You only have to notice. Notice the way life reflects your thoughts, the way energy answers energy, the way everything you encounter carries your signature, not because you created it all consciously, but because you're woven into it, the same thread, the same field. There is no edge between you and the world, no hard line where you end and something else begins. That's the illusion, that's the veil. And when it lifts, even for a moment, it changes everything. You realize you're not in the universe, you are the universe, wearing a face, speaking a name, moving through a life that feels linear but isn't, that feels separate but isn't, that feels outside but is always inside. Every judgment you've ever made, it was about yourself. Every person who challenged you, they showed you something hidden. Every moment of beauty, it rose up from within you to meet your gaze. Because this dream is interactive, it's intelligent, it responds to you, not to your words, but to your state. And when your state shifts, so does the dream. That's how powerful you are. Not in a loud way, not in a way that needs to control, but in the quietest way, in the way light moves through glass and changes everything it touches. You don't need to overpower reality. You only need to return to coherence, to the knowing that your inner and outer worlds are not separate worlds, they are one. One image, seen from different sides. One vibration, mirrored through experience. And every time you soften, every time you choose love instead of fear, presence instead of projection, trust instead of tension, the mirror clears. And in that clarity you don't just see yourself. You see everything, the whole, the divine, the pattern, too vast for the mind but perfect to the soul. It all becomes obvious, like a dream you're waking up inside. You recognize the voice in someone else's story. You feel the echo of your pain in someone else's tears. You notice that the love you gave away still lives in places you forgot you planted it. And it comes back. It always comes back. Not because the world is kind or cruel, but because it's reflective. It shows you. And when you see that, really see it, a gentleness takes over. You stop fighting what you used to call reality. You start listening to it instead. You let it teach you. Let it hold up the hologram. Let it show you where you've been split, where you've been whole, where you've been asleep, and where you're waking up. Because that's what this moment is. A waking. Not into something new, but into something ancient. Something that's always been true but rarely remembered. That you are not just a wave in the ocean. You are the ocean. The entire sea of stars and silence, dreaming of being human for a little while. And this little while is sacred. Not because it's the whole story, but because it's the part of the story where you get to remember, where you get to open your eyes, where you get to smile at the mirror and say, "Ah, there you are," not just to yourself, because everyone is part of you, every friend, every stranger, every soul that crosses your path, even those who bring pain, especially those, are pieces of the pattern. They help you see where the illusion still lives, where the wound still echoes, where the shadow still asks for light. And that's the gift, not to escape the dream, but to wake up inside it, to move through it lucidly, to know that every corner, every challenge, every shimmer of joy is a message from the whole. To you, as you, through you, to you, as you, through you. That's the miracle of this dream. You are not trapped inside it, you are expressing it. The dream is alive because you are. It shifts because you do. It reflects because that's what light does. It bounces, it echoes, it ripples across consciousness like the sky ripples across water. And when the water is still, the reflection becomes clear. That's why stillness matters. Not to escape the world, but to see it rightly. To see that the people who come into your life aren't random. They're frequencies, resonances, teachers in disguise. Mirrors, not of who you are, but of what you're ready to meet. Sometimes they bring your brilliance. Sometimes they bring your shadow. Sometimes they show you love. Other times they show you what's still unhealed. But all of it, every interaction, every reaction, every unexpected meeting, it all fits. Even the things that make no sense at first. The breakups, the breakdowns, the detours, the delays. They're all part of the dream's design. Each one inviting you deeper into yourself. Asking, can you see the whole even here? Can you see the light even now? Can you feel the truth even in this? And when you say yes, even softly, even trembling, something opens, the dream shifts, the loop dissolves, because you're no longer fighting it, you're seeing it, and in seeing it you transcend it, not by floating above it, but by walking through it awake. That's what lucidity is, not control, not escape. Awareness, the quiet knowing that you are both the experiencer and the experience, both the form and the formless. And nothing, no moment, no person, no mistake is outside the dream. Nothing is other. That's the illusion. That's the story you were taught, that the world is out there, separate, dangerous, indifferent. But it never was. It was always within you. And now you feel it. You feel how your thoughts ripple into your body, how your body ripples into the room, how the energy you carry enters the space before your words do. You notice that when you soften, others soften. When you become present, the world seems to breathe differently. It's not coincidence, it's coherence. Because reality is not a static thing. It's a harmonic one. It responds to tone, to rhythm, to truth. And your truth, your most authentic, relaxed, embodied state, is what restores the dream to clarity. That's why healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just presence. Sometimes it's just feeling. Sometimes it's just finally seeing the pattern and choosing to relate to it with love instead of fear. That alone changes the code. Because what you meet with love cannot loop the same way. The hologram has to shift. The reflection has to repattern. And in that shift you see it clearly. You've only been looking through a distorted lens. A lens shaped by memory, by story, by the survival mechanisms of a self that forgot it was also the whole. But that self is remembering now. Not in concept. In vibration, in being, in breath. And the more you remember, the more you soften into it, the more life reflects it back. Like a river that doesn't need to be told where to flow, it just flows. Like the moon that doesn't need to shine, it just reflects. Like you, reflecting the whole, being the whole, without trying, without force, just by being exactly who and what you already are. Exactly what you already are. No more pretending, no more fixing, no more searching the sky for what's already in your breath. You don't need to become the whole. You are the whole. You don't need to prove it, just feel it. Feel how the universe hums in your chest when you sit in silence. Feel how time disappears when you look at something with real presence. Feel how you've always known, even as a child, even in dreams, that the world is more alive than it seems, that it sees you, that it speaks to you, and not with words, but with pattern, with synchronicity, with energy. You see repeating numbers, you think of someone and they appear. You feel drawn to a place, and something in your life shifts. These aren't accidents, they're alignments. The dream folding in on itself to say, you're close, keep going. Because the deeper you go, the less you remains. Not in a scary way, in a peaceful one. The self you've carried, the personality, the past, the performance, begins to loosen. And in its place, there's space. Space for stillness, space for peace, space for something far older and quieter to emerge. Not a new identity, but the one beneath all identities, the one that watches, that waits, that never rushes, that never forgets who you really are. And when that awareness becomes your center, everything simplifies. You stop needing to be right. You stop needing to be seen. You stop needing the world to reflect a specific image, because you no longer confuse the reflection with yourself. You know the difference now. You can enjoy the dream without getting lost in it. You can touch the surface without forgetting the depths. You can move through the hologram with grace because you're no longer trying to rearrange the projection. You're focused on the light, the source, the frequency that creates the image. And when the light is clear, the dream becomes beautiful again, not because it's perfect, because it's alive. And you are alive inside it, not as a player in someone else's game, but as awareness itself, dreaming a form, wearing a story, playing in time while anchored in the timeless. That's the paradox. You are both the wave and the one watching the wave. The name and the silence before the name, the character and the awareness behind the eyes. And the longer you live from that awareness, the less you need certainty. You don't need every answer. You don't need to force outcomes. You don't need to chase validation, because you're rooted now in being, just as it is. It's already sacred. You don't need to add anything to it. You only need to see it. And the more you see it, the more whole you feel. Because wholeness was never about fixing yourself. It was about seeing yourself clearly, the real self, the timeless self, the self that never needed fixing in the first place. And from that place of clarity, you forgive more easily. You listen more deeply. You speak more gently, not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because the noise is gone, the tension is gone, and what's left is peace. Not floating above life, but rooted in it, present in it, capable of holding contradiction without breaking, capable of walking through uncertainty with an open heart, capable of seeing others not as threats or reflections of the past, but as sparks of the same source, dreaming their way back home, just like you. Just like you, each of us walking the spiral, thinking we're alone, only to find we're circling the same center. Not one self, but the self, appearing as many, disguised as difference, but all made of the same light, bending through different lenses. When you see that, truly see it, the division dissolves. You stop needing to fix people. You stop needing to prove yourself. You no longer try to save the world in order to be worthy of it, because you recognize it's already whole. Even in its chaos, even in its pain, it's not broken, it's in process. It's becoming, and so are you. Becoming more aware of what's always been true, that nothing is missing, that nothing is separate, that nothing real can ever be lost. The self you've searched for through years of effort, through teachings and trauma and time, it was never far. It was just quiet, patient, waiting for you to turn inward, to slow down, to soften the gaze, and when you finally did, it welcomed you home, not with fireworks, but with stillness, with breath, with that subtle feeling that you're no longer looking at life, but as life, that you're not chasing the dream, but waking up inside it, lucid, calm, whole. You begin to move differently. You begin to listen more. You begin to love without needing return. Because love has become your natural state, not something you give, not something you get, but something you are. And when you live as love, the dream becomes radiant. Even the hard parts shimmer with sacredness. Even the questions feel like prayers. Even your wounds begin to glow with the light of what they've taught you. Because now you see the whole pattern. You see how every piece fits, how nothing was wasted, how even the things you wish had never happened were threads in the tapestry. And without them the pattern wouldn't be complete. You are that pattern. You are that light. And the world you see, the world you once thought was outside, is simply the echo of that light made visible. It reflects not your flaws, not your failures, but your expansion, your remembering, your return. So let it reflect, let it teach, let it speak in symbols and signs and silence. And know that whatever it shows you, you are ready. You have always been ready, not because you're perfect, but because you are perfect, because you are the whole, experiencing itself as a moment, as a name, as a now, and now you remember. The dream is not a trap, it's a mirror. The world is not your enemy, it's your echo, and you are not a part of something greater. You are the greater. You are the dreamer. You are the dream. You are the light that casts the shadow, the love that makes the shape, the silence that holds the sound, the awareness that is always, always here, now, and always.